All things exist in relationship. We live in a universe of unbroken oneness, where everything is connected and everything depends on everything else. And at the highest level of what you are the God Self, which is everything. You alone rule your mind as the creator. This is a metaphysical principle that you cannot afford to miss if you want to master this second discipline. Namaste, my friends, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Abke, and in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you what is probably the most practical spiritual asset that Ra gives us in the Law of One material, and that is the 3 disciplines of the personality. To really live the Law of One requires us to deeply understand these 3 disciplines, not only in their practical application, but in their significance to our polarization and our spiritual growth. Because what the 3 disciplines of the personality essentially are is Ra's way of teaching us how to perform spiritual balancing. And spiritual balancing is the art of tuning each energy center to its precise and perfect tune that the Creator designed for you to have, as every individual's balance between the chakras is unique, like a unique musical chord, perhaps. Now, we all need to purify and balance every energy center, but that unique chord or melody that plays through our energy centers is unique to us, because each one of us is a unique expression of the one infinite Creator. So to actualize our unique expression in this life requires us to practice the disciplines of the personality. So that's what we're going to be learning about in today's episode. So I invite you to join me for this 24th edition of the Law of One series as we explore the disciplines of the personality. Now, before we dive into these 3 disciplines of the personality, I want to begin by addressing an important question, which is, what is the personality in the way that Ra uses that term? What are we disciplining here, right? And this is a really interesting and important point that almost everybody misses when they read the Law of One material. I myself probably read through the Law of One 4 or 5 times at least before I started to catch on to this fact. And that is that the personality is sort of Ra's term for the ego. And this is quite significant. What Ra is implying by using the word personality instead of ego is that the ego self, or the false nature, only expresses through our personality, and there is no other way we would ever see it or know of its existence. Or we could say, in a different way, if we didn't have a personality, the ego would have no way of expressing itself through us. And now, this is not to say that every single aspect of your personality is purely the ego. That's not what's being implied. It's more like the analogy of a glass ornament, or let's say a diamond. This diamond, when it's clean and pure, is radiant and shimmers with beauty. But when it's covered with mud and dirt and grime, its light is hidden and blocked and obscured by all of that, all of those distortions, as Ra would say. So the disciplines of the personality is the act of cleaning off the mud, the dirt, and the grime, the blockages in our chakras that keep our true divine personality from expressing. So the ego, in a sense, kind of hijacks the personality and makes our personality its primary vehicle for expression. The other important point here is that only the personality needs to be disciplined. The one infinite Creator in you, the God Self, doesn't need to be disciplined, does it? It's already perfect. And in fact, it is the God Self in you that is doing the disciplining. The God Self in you is that awareness you have to be able to discern the true from the false in your mind, or love from fear, and bring correction to the false, and bring healing to fear. That is the God self performing that action, not the ego or the human personality. So we are refining the personality to make it a living crystal, or as Ra calls it, becoming crystallized, so that the pure radiance of our unique essence can finally shine forth unhindered. So without further ado, let's dive into these 3 disciplines and see what they're all about. In session 74, Ra says, the heart of the discipline of the personality is threefold. 1. Know yourself. 2. Accept yourself. 3. Become the creator. Most of you are familiar with the fact that there's sort of 3 levels to our mind. We have the conscious level, the subconscious level, and the superconscious level. And what I want to show you is the way that these 3 disciplines work within each one of these 3 levels. In my Spiritual Intelligence series, I break down how the different brain waves access each of these 3 levels of our mind. So beta 2, beta 1, and alpha 2 brain waves access our conscious mind. Alpha 1, theta, and delta waves access our subconscious mind, and gamma waves access our superconscious mind. And so here we have the 3 levels of the mind perfectly correlating to each one of these 3 disciplines. Know yourself at the conscious level, accept yourself at the subconscious level, and become the creator at the superconscious level. So let's look at the first discipline, which is know thyself. Know thyself is work upon the conscious mind, and that is the conscious correction of every errant thought, belief, or self-perception I hold. And so the way I like to think about the first discipline is the practice of self-correction. And this begins by knowing who you are. And on the conscious level, we can only know who we are conceptually, right? We have to learn this at some point through spiritual texts or spiritual teachers who illuminate this fact to us that we are not just a physical body. We are the consciousness indwelling in it. We are an eternal, infinite being that is one with all that is. And so you have to begin consciously knowing yourself as that self. Otherwise, the false self, the ego, will always imply that you're just a body and just a limited human character. So know thyself begins with understanding who you are conceptually. And then from that point of reference, you must begin to take every thought captive and notice any moment where the ego is implying lack or limitation or an imperfection of any kind in your universe and consciously correct it. And so this self-correction is done through the positive use of denial, as A Course in Miracles calls it, and then the affirmation of truth. So for example, if I notice that my mind implies any thought of lack in my life, as soon as I catch it, I will deny that thought. And doing that, I'm revoking my energy from that thought. And this is called requalifying a thought. So a little thought of lack appears, awareness catches it, and I say, I revoke and denounce all belief in lack in my mind, and I affirm that I am abundance. I affirm that abundance is all that there is in God's universe. And in this way, I'm shifting the energy that I've endowed into that belief in lack, pulling the energy out of it, and replacing that energy into the belief of abundance. So this must be an ongoing daily practice, right? Moment by moment. Are you checking in? Are you staying aware? Are you being mindful of your thought activity? Contraction or expansion. Our state of being only has these 2 functions. And the true self, the God self within you, when you connect with it, when it is in activation in you, can only make your energy expand. because the true self is infinite and without limitation, so it doesn't know contraction. The false self, however, is the exact opposite. The ego, when it is in activation or when you connect with it, will only ever make your energy constrict. Your state of being will feel contracted, and that's what we call a negative emotion. So this is the practical use of your emotional guidance system. My emotions are always telling me about the accuracy of my self-perception. If I ever feel contracted emotionally, I know for sure I'm perceiving myself out of alignment with my true eternal nature. And so that's where self-correction needs to be exacted. So we must invoke the first discipline of the personality anytime we notice a negative thought running through our mind. If we don't do this, then those thoughts will never be corrected and will always continue to operate with unfettered access, because you're the only creator of your reality. You alone rule your mind as the creator. And so part of knowing yourself is to know this fact, right? I'm the only creator of my reality. That is true of what I am. And so because I am the captain at the helm of my consciousness, I make no room for negative, errant, or false thinking any longer. I qualify every thought that passes through my consciousness with the light of truth, love, and unity. Anything less than that is going to be corrected. So this is the way that I like to see the first discipline in a practical way. It is the practice of knowing who you are at all times and correcting any thought that doesn't line up with your true and eternal nature. So let's read this quote from session 82 of the Law of One, where Ra expands upon this practice and explains the significance of knowing thyself as the foundation of the disciplines of the personality. In the context of doing work in the disciplines of the personality, in order to be of more full efficiency in the central acceptance of the self, it is first quite necessary to know the distortions of the self which the entity is accepting. Each thought and action must then be scrutinized for the precise foundation of the distortions of any reactions. This process shall lead to the more central task of acceptance. However, the architrave must be in place before the structure is built. Now, the word architrave is like the central beam or the main beam of a house structure. So think about like the skeleton or the framework of a house before the house is actually built. That is the first discipline of the personality. And the house itself that gets built around that framework is the second discipline, love thyself. Self-acceptance is self-love, but you can't love a self that you don't know. So knowing thyself has to come first at the conscious level, whereas accepting thyself happens at the subconscious level. And so to do this, we are required to get past our judgments and our guilt about who we are, and gradually begin accepting every aspect of our life, every mistake we've made, and seeing all of it from a higher or more heavenly perspective. Looking at your life through heaven's eyes, seeing yourself as a toddler learning how to crawl, and then learning how to walk, and stumbling and falling and getting back up, is the simplest metaphor for how we are to come to love ourselves despite all of our past mistakes. And so the way that accepting thyself shows up in a practical daily sense is, how do you talk to yourself throughout the day? What is your inner dialogue with yourself like? Do you speak lovingly to yourself, or do you speak harshly to yourself? As long as you are identified with the body or the human character, you will always perceive yourself as having tons of flaws and limitations and imperfections. And then you'll say, man, it sure seems hard to love myself. And it should seem hard because you're trying to love a self that doesn't exist. All the mistakes you've made in your past were just learning activities. And nobody faults a child for learning their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. Believe it or not, learning how to be kind to others, how to be patient, how to forgive is like ABC 1, 2, 3 in the spiritual world. These are very elementary lessons that here in third density seem extremely difficult. But higher density beings see these things the way that we see young children in kindergarten learning the basics. So can you start with some compassion for yourself and all the mistakes you've made in your life, and understand that every mistake you've ever made was inevitable and for your highest good, in the sense that it taught you something you didn't know, and it gave you information about yourself and about the universe that you need to evolve into your true nature. So everything that happens in your life is good in that sense. Everything works for you. So any guilt or any judgments we're carrying from our past must be forgiven. And so forgiveness is the primary way to apply accept thyself. To forgive yourself is to accept who you truly are. Meaning, if I was ever unkind, if I ever hurt or abused somebody, that was because I didn't know who I really am. I was acting from a false nature. And so, of course I was abusive and unkind. I had no other option. As we start to see these things, our subconscious mind begins bringing up our traumas one by one that need to be dealt with. All the guilty shadows and remnants we've tried to keep stuffed in the closet have to be brought into the light and loved, forgiven, and accepted. And until they are, we're going to keep suppressing them and stuffing them back down into those lower chakras, which increases the distortions and the blockages. So the way that I like to teach this second discipline of loving or accepting yourself is through this simple framework of loving relationship. If you follow my channel at all, then you've probably heard me teach on this before, which is that all things exist in relationship. This is a metaphysical principle that you cannot afford to miss if you want to master this second discipline. We live in a universe of unbroken oneness, where everything is connected and everything depends on everything else. And at the highest level of what you are the God self, which is everything. So every person, every place, every event in the universe is you. And so you must come to look upon the entire universe and everything that happens within it with love. You must engage with the universe in every single relationship you have lovingly. And so this needs to be done both with the outer world as well as the inner world. Meaning, I cannot have an unloving relationship with anything inside of myself. I cannot have an unloving relationship to any thought, any feeling, or any self-perception. I must look upon every movement of my inner world with love and be in a loving relationship, which doesn't mean we don't correct the false thoughts and perceptions, as we've said, because it is loving to correct what is false. It just means that we never feel judgment, resentment, negativity, or attack towards our ego mind or the thoughts of the ego. But when the ego is active in our mind, we say, "That's okay, ego. I forgive you for that thought. It's okay that you believe that about yourself. It's simply not true." And in this way, when we learn to give our thoughts love rather than judgment or guilt, we begin to depolarize the negative energy that we've qualified those thoughts with. Because remember, you're the creator of your reality, the inner reality and the outer one. So every negative thought you think has been qualified by you in the past at some point through guilt, judgment, resentment, shame, insecurity, etc. So you have to re-qualify every thought with love. And so the simplest way to practice the second discipline, in my personal opinion, is by using this framework of being in loving relationship to everything. Not only is that fourth density consciousness, but that is the second discipline of the personality. Love thyself. And because you are everything, you cannot truly love yourself if you're still engaging in an unloving relationship with anything. And so obviously, this is much more easy to see in our relationships with other people, or our job, or any activity in the outer world. It's much more difficult to see with the inner world and our thoughts and feelings about who we are. So this requires a lot of self-awareness and self-attention. But once you get in the habit of just applying this one standard to everything, is this a loving relationship? Am I in a loving relationship to this thought right now? Am I in a loving relationship to this feeling right now? No? Then I need to begin a loving relationship with it. And that always starts with forgiveness. You can do this on the fly at any moment in your life, no matter where you are, the moment you notice your energy contract. And so in a way, these disciplines become automatic habits. You only truly need to practice them for a few weeks or months diligently until this practice becomes established in you. And then it's an effortless practice. You just notice the thoughts all day long and begin loving them, forgiving them, and correcting them with the truth. So begin by tuning in to your inner monologue. How are you talking to yourself throughout the day? Are you speaking lovingly to yourself? Are you looking lovingly upon your thoughts and your feelings? And if not, the only framework you need to establish is, how do I engage in a loving relationship now with this thought or feeling? And from that position, from the inner world being loved, you will naturally extend that love to everyone and everything in the outer world. So, the structure is in place through self-knowledge. The house has been constructed through self-love. And now it's time to fill the house and decorate it as we desire it to be. And that brings us to the third discipline of the personality: become the creator. In essence, this is that discipline that is spoken of by all the great law of attraction teachers, Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, Abraham Hicks, and hundreds of others we could mention. So I don't need to belabor the techniques of manifestation and law of attraction. But the principle of becoming the creator is to understand that your I am principle, your I am knowledge, is the creative principle within you. And so you must practice the ability to utilize your I am power and direct it according to the reality you want to create. And so this is not a very easy discipline to master. And it's especially challenging to master if we haven't first done the first two disciplines. A lot of people get so excited about manifesting the reality they want that they overlook the importance of the first two disciplines. First, know yourself, and then fully accept yourself. And from that foundation, you can easily create whatever reality you desire. But if you're full of blockages, distortions, false beliefs, judgments, guilt, and shame about yourself, good luck truly manifesting a beautiful life, because those distortions are also creating your reality in every moment. Every energetic distortion you hold in the lower chakras is attracting experiences to you that match that frequency. And why is that? Because again, the outer world is only there to reflect the inner world. The outer world is there to teach us about how we think and feel about ourselves, so that we can begin correcting the false beliefs and feelings. So if you're not paying close attention to the experiences you're drawing to yourself, taking full responsibility for those experiences as the creator, and then bringing balance, correction, and healing to them, you can try and try and try to manifest the perfect job, the perfect partner, or whatever it is, and you'll find that you continue to fail time and time again. Even if you're able to attract that perfect partner you wanted, or that perfect job you wanted, you're going to notice that you don't have the foundation to keep it. It isn't going to last very long in your experience because you're not a full match to it yet based on those blockages you're still carrying. So All that to say, let's not be in a rush to get to this third discipline before we've sufficiently practiced and mastered the first two disciplines. Becoming the creator is when we begin to work within the superconscious mind, and the I am within you is the point of contact where thought and feeling enter from the non-physical into the physical. Becoming the creator begins by knowing that our thoughts and feelings create our reality, and that within your own awareness of I am is a power that is connected to every point in time and space. It is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. It contains every answer to every problem. So to utilize this power consciously, we must practice drawing upon it by declaring our will into action through thought and feeling. Whenever you use the I am to declare or affirm something, you are loosing the God power into action in your world. This is called qualifying a thought. Whenever we feel a charged, positive emotion, such as love, joy, gratitude, or courage, we are accessing the gamma state, which puts us into the superconscious mind. So by charging our thoughts with a powerfully felt emotion, we are qualifying that thought with the creative power that we are feeling about it. And that combination of thought and feeling is our creative power. Whatever you declare with feeling and conviction must come to pass, unless you cancel it out by thinking and feeling its opposite. Otherwise, that creation cannot return to you void. A qualified thought is like a boomerang that we send out into the universe, which always returns to us with accumulated energy. So, knowing who you are as the creator, one with all that is, and using this creative power to serve, to heal, and to bless all creation, including yourself, is the third discipline of the personality. And in session 74, Ra says, "The third step is that step which, when accomplished, renders one the most humble servant of all, transparent in personality, and completely able to know and accept other selves. In relation to the pursuit of the magical working, the continuing discipline of the personality involves the adept in knowing itself, accepting itself, and thus clearing the path towards the great indigo gateway to the creator. To become the creator is to become all that there is. There is then no personality in the sense with which the adept begins its learned teaching. As the consciousness of the indigo ray becomes more crystalline, more work may be done, and more may be expressed from intelligent infinity." So, in summary, the third discipline of the personality, becoming the creator, begins with you stepping out of victim consciousness and into creator consciousness. To understand that the I am presence in you is the only governing force in your universe. And every time you say I am, you loose the God power into activity in your world, and it cannot return to you void. As you practice this reality creation and manifestation, you begin to know yourself on a deeper and deeper level. And this leads to the final step of becoming the creator, and that is self-realization. If you want to know yourself as the creator, you have to practice being the creator. If you want to know yourself as everything, you have to practice loving everything. And if you want to know yourself as you truly are, you have to begin correcting all the thoughts, beliefs, and self-perceptions you hold about what you are not. These are the three disciplines of the personality that we should all be practicing all day long, day in and day out. We must learn to love this practice and look for every opportunity to implement these three disciplines. And in doing so, we are spiritually balancing our energy centers more and more each day, gradually refining ourselves into that perfect, crystallized being, that easily and effortlessly reflects the love and light of the one infinite Creator.